Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, episode 89 of the pod, and the very first live episode of the podcast. Want to say a special hello to all those of you who are here with us live, joining us in the chat. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. Before we get into our discussion of the Acolyte episode 8 and just the show as a whole in general, want to give a quick reminder that if you're not yet subscribed on YouTube, definitely hit that subscribe button and the like on the stream today if you're watching live. And thank you to the 441 of you who are currently subscribers to the channel. We are getting closer and closer to that 500 mark. So cool to see that milestone approaching in the near future. As a reminder, you can always contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars thoughts, questions, or otherwise, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. The Hoth Hangout podcast is also findable wherever you get your pods, including both Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a review, leave a 5-star review on the pod. We would appreciate it very much. And it allows other people who love Star Wars to more easily discover the podcast as well. You can find us on the socials, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, or X. We are at Hoth Hangout on each of those. Additionally, the link to the Hoth Hangout community Discord server is findable down in the show notes of today's episode as well, and in the description if you're watching the video live over on YouTube. And additionally, going into our discussion of the Acolyte today, we're posing the question, is there going to be a second season of this show? I think that's a question that's on all of our minds. Certainly, it would seem like that's the case based off of the way that the season one ended. But, of course, with the discourse around the show, is that going to be the case or not? We want to say a quick hi to all those of you who are joining us once again. And Joey, a hello to you as well. How you doing, my friend?
I am super excited. This is our first live podcast episode that we've ever done. We've done other things like gaming and things like that. You and I come from the Twitch background, so we are very familiar with a live chat and how to kind of operate around that. But we would not be here if it wasn't for you guys. So let's say what's up to everybody. We got Spy on Sports. We got Kid Caduceus. Of course, we have our friend Nestle. Moira is Mariah, right? That's how you say it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a that's a friend of Ben's. If you guys don't know, Spy and Sports Cat as well. Hello, how you doing, Kitty? And we got Hero Carry here as well. Thank you all for tuning in early here for the new episode of the podcast, our first live episode. We hope you enjoy. We're going to talk all about Star Wars and, of course, about the last episode, the season finale, probably not series finale of the Acolytes. So we're excited, and it's going to be a fun time. Hope you guys enjoy.
Definitely, yeah. And for anyone that has yeah, friend. And, for anyone that
I,
has
I, I
questions
didn't
or
want to. I
comments
didn't. I wasn't
throughout,
sure. I wasn't sure how deep you want to. You just wanted to
that is
tell
that is
everybody.
my that is I'm comfortable saying that that
Okay.
is my fiancé in chat, so, everyone say
Hi,
hi.
fiance. Hi, fiance.
If anyone has any comments or questions about the episode or just the Acolyte as a whole, feel free to keep those coming tonight. We'll do as best as we can to kind of, factor in some thoughts that all of you have into our discussion as well. We're going to be doing kind of the typical layout that we normally would do. We'll talk about a couple of, actually, one piece of news, a couple of comments that some of you actually left on previous podcasts and reactions. We'll talk about the poll that we did last week, which had a surprising results, I might add, based off of what we got in the
Mm-hmm.
episode, and then we'll dive into our episode discussion, as is normally the case of the format of the podcast. So, um, yes, and, and thank you, Kelly, appreciate it. Well, the one piece of news we have today is actually centered around a non acolyte piece of news here with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, something that hopefully will be, you know, maybe a step up from season 3. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people thought season 3 of Mandalorian was sort of kind of somewhat lower level than seasons 1 and 2. The decision was made for the time being at least to forego a season 4 of the show and rather focus on this Mandalorian and Grogu movie. The movie is currently slated to come out May 22nd of 2026, so nearly 2 years away. I know when I first read May, I was like, "Oh, it's not that long to wait. It's only about 10 months or something, and then I looked at it again and I was like, "Wait, okay, that's, like, almost 2 years." So, May 22nd of 2026. Filming on this movie was supposedly reported, to begin in mid-June, um, and that production was supposed to wrap in October. And it's my understanding, based off of this article, that images have begun to be shared, perhaps for the first time on the internet. Did you get a chance to look at any of these interesting images that they had from The Mandalorian and Grogu set, Joey?
I can never decipher exactly what I'm looking at. It's normally like just a really far shot of the set, and you could see a little bit of something that could resemble something, but I'm never good at looking at that stuff. So if you want to go find that kind of thing on the internet, go for it. But I don't know. I never really get too excited about those types of images.
Yeah, yeah, it's kinda even hard to tell what it is just looking at it. It's almost like just a piece of scenery with a blue screen behind it. It will be interesting, I think, if they decide to stick with the way they've done the show where what's that panoramic, like, blue screen that they use for the way they filmed
Oh,
most
the
of The
volume?
Mandalorian? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They
I'm
call it the
curious
volume,
if
yeah.
they'll continue to do that with a, like, feature film, or if they'll just, do the filming the way they've been doing the show. So, I don't know, be interesting to see, but, again, set to release May 22nd of 2026. The production of The Mandalorian and Grogu seems to officially be underway. So something to look forward to. That's probably actually roughly the timeline that we had, maybe a little bit shorter, but the Acolyte was first announced,
Mm.
um, to the time we got to watch the Acolyte, this past month and a half or 2 months or so, we had to wait about, I think, over 2 years from the time it was first announced. So, yeah, that's our one piece of news today. May 22nd, 2026, still the release date for the Mandalorian and Grogu film. Keep an eye out for it, and be on the lookout for some interesting behind the scenes set photos that may or may not be coming to an internet near you in the near future. So, as we mentioned, we've got a couple viewer comments we wanted to showcase, for actually today, from a combination of
I think
different
these were
things
all
that
just I think this was all just a reaction video from
Oh, that's
today.
right, yeah. From today's reaction video. Some of these some of these were some actually, there's a few of these that I didn't even think about until, those of you who commented, left the comment. I was like, "Wow, that's a really good point. Didn't even think about that." The first comment is from JX Champ. JX Champ says, "Well, at least it's over. Effing bloody disgrace is what this show is, and you end it by insinuating that Yoda is also corrupt. F this show." And then we also had a
Big
comment
fan.
on that comment. Yeah, yeah, big fan of the show, by the way. No. We also had a comment from Thomas, who said, in reply to JX Champ, Yoda was literally corrupt in the prequel. So, two really opposing dynamics
Yeah.
here in the first comment right off the bat. What do you think about the way that I'm sure we'll get into this with our discussion too, but
hmm
the fact that they chose to include Yoda there at the very end, what is the insinuation? Is it automatically that Yoda is corrupt? I feel like he should be able to read Vernestra, you know what I mean?
Right.
How
Yeah,
did you read
I
that
agree.
scene?
I agree with you that Vernestra, she's doing something shady here. I'm interested in the people who have read the High Republic books and
Mm,
know a little bit more about Vernestra's character. If this is something that is actually she would do. So I'm interested in that. And two, with Yoda, the Yoda part about it, we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But for the most part, you got to have Yoda. Yoda's around during this era, so you got to have him in there at some point. If it is at the end of the season, and does that? I think all it says is that he's going to be part of the next season, assuming that they've greenlit a second season here. So I think that's all it really means. I'm not going to make that leap to say that he is corrupt in all of this or he's anything like that. I'm not going to make that leap yet. But I mean, I don't blame this particular viewer for having that opinion either.
do you think Yoda knows, and this is maybe our first chance today to ask chat this as well, those of you watching live. Do you think Yoda knows that Vernestra is lying?
I would hope so. That seems like something that that Yoda would know what to do. You commented quite a bit on how Soul kind of sold, if you will, on
Mm,
a lot of the things that he just completely missed out on, even just noticing that something's happening around him. So this is Yoda we're talking about. I'm not expecting him to kind of completely miss out on some of these thoughts and these feelings. He should definitely be able to figure out Vernestra out.
yeah, which I guess the natural question to ask after that is, like, if he's able to figure her out, how does that factor into his understanding of Anakin in The Phantom Menace?
Mm,
I'd love to kinda see if they do get to do a season 2 of this show, kind of how they play that with Yoda. I'm really curious. I thought it was a cool inclusion for sure. Like, I'll always take Yoda in my Star Wars as opposed to not having Yoda in my Star Wars. He was my favorite character growing up, actually.
of course, yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, what does this mean for what he and the rest of the council believe, 87 years in the future from now? But Spy on Sports said, "Clouded by the dark side," his thoughts are. And Kid Caduceus said, "This will lead to how diluted the Jedi are with politics during the prequels." Yeah, so, I mean, this could kinda be I mean, we saw it a little bit with the Senator, kinda that taste of
Yeah.
the combination of politics and the Jedi and how those things are, like, slowly maybe the lines are being blurred between what each of those means to one another, really. So
Hmm.
anyways, food for thought as we approach a second season of this show that may or may not happen. I'm really curious to see what they do with Yoda and Vanessa Rose relationship. But second comment was from Lord Galvatron. Lord Galvatron said, "Your finale episode should never introduce more questions that don't get answered. I swear this show was trying to be terrible. Mission accomplished, I guess." It is kind of an interesting for as much flack as this show has received. Um, I would be so curious if I could have one thing with this show, I would love to be a fly on the wall in the writer's room, and kind of, like, hear them work through the process of writing it, because maybe I would even be able to understand parts of it that feel incomprehensible to me at the current moment, um, but I don't know, there's definitely a lot more questions with the finale,
Yep.
and you could argue that that's because they wanna set it up for future shows,
Yeah.
or I mean, future seasons and more money, um, but it is a little bit disheartening as a fan of a show when you watch an entire season of something and then the finale happens and it's just like, boom, here's another thing. Boom, let me drop Plagueis
Hmm.
in. Boom, let me drop Yoda in. Like,
Right. Right.
bye, Soul's gone. It's like, wow, what's
Yeah.
happening? It's like a little bit jarring as a fan. What did you think about this?
I think the big thing that I'm curious and how they're going to resolve is these were all those Jedi that died. Who's left? We got Vernestra and Yoda. That's pretty much all that we know is around at this point, right? Oh, and
Don't forget
was it?
Kiadi Mundi.
I was about to say that Kiadi Mooney, exactly. So we've got three that we know of to battle against or try to find OSHA, and I mean, I don't know if that's a full season. You know what I mean? So that's my concern. Is I mean, I get if they want to set it up for a second season, but it's not balanced anymore. Like
Mm,
who are we actually be looking for? Against the Sith, against the Plagueis and all that. So that would be my question.
yeah. Spy on Sports said there's probably quite a few flies in that writer's room. Flies are attracted, or after all, are attracted to poop. Yeah, and the Plagueis thing, which I'd love to talk more about later, and I won't get too deep into it right now. But just like,
Hmm.
are they like, is the inclusion of Plagueis in the way he was included, kind of like lurking in a cave, that he is connected to Chimere, or that he is a you know, uh, like a bystander and an onlooker, and he's like, this is the origin of him, like, wanting to create life through like the Force creating life because he saw it done with this, with May and Osha, or maybe is there an off chance that he is actually the one that created May and Osha and it wasn't the witches at all? I think there's a
Right.
lot of questions to be had there in regards to Plagueis, but anyways, thank you to Lord Galvatron for that second comment, and there are quite a few more questions looming after the end of the season. I will agree, but our third comment was from Natura Angel. Natura Angel said, "I liked the episode, especially the thing about Plagueis and the conversation with the senator. The Jedi's mistake is being in politics." And this is kind of alluding to what we were just talking about a second ago, that um, the direction of the Jedi, and maybe Vernestra's character is really highlighting this the most, that they're becoming. I don't know if I would say. I mean, I would say Vernestra is arguably corrupt, but that the
Hmm.
Jedi as a whole are becoming, more and more politicized, less and less of what they used to be or should be, or the idealized version of what the Jedi should be. So, I know during that scene when we were watching it in our live reaction, the acting performance from the actor playing the senator was something that you really liked and connected with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see that senator. Hopefully, a little bit more in the next season, if there is a next season. The acting, I mean, just the acting was phenomenal to me. So, and I thought the writing of that in that scene was actually pretty good too. Just the way and direction. I guess everything about that scene I enjoyed. So I'm hoping that dynamic of Vernestra and that particular senator, we see a little bit more of that going forward.
Hmm. Yeah, I would assume that he'll be a recurring character in the second season of this show if it does come to fruition. So, um, that again, that'll be an interesting thing to just see how the discussion goes surrounding. I mean, I would be curious to know. Obviously, there's a general negative sentiment around the show, but how does
Mhm.
that translate into like money made by the show? Because like
Right.
obviously, a lot of people are displeased by it, but nonetheless, the people who are displeased by it are still watching it.
Hmm.
So, does displeasure not necessarily translate into lack of success because people are still watching it and they're still making money because people are watching it? I don't know. These are all questions I'm sure Disney HQ is asking when they're deciding whether or not to greenlight the second season. But our last comment is from Tamsin. Tamsin, and this was actually a really good catch. This I loved this comment. Tamsin said, "Listen to the music when you see Plagueis. It's the same as when Palpatine was telling Anakin the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise." But the whole show was a disappointment, in my opinion. So, highlighting a really cool Easter egg here in the episode, while
Hmm.
also like kind of holding to that position of the show was a little disappointing, or perhaps more than a little disappointing. But um, yeah, I mean, that's something I didn't catch live in the moment when it happens, and just the fact that that is a thing,
Right.
in case there were any people out there who were like, "Oh, it might not be Plagueis, like it could be anybody else. It might just be someone who looks like Plagueis." Like it's literally the same music. So
Right.
more or less an Easter egg confirming to us that yes, that is definitely Darth Plagueis. Um, I- I'm just curious how they do him in live action if they do have a next season of this show. So I think he'll be a really cool character to see in live action. I just hope they don't like mess with the character too much. I mean, you and I did a book review of the Darth Plagueis book,
Right.
and it was a fantastic book, really great character, and I would love to see a lot of what is in that Legends novel
Hmm.
be the inspiration for the character on the second season of this show if it does get made. So whether they take that inspiration or not, that remains to be seen, but I'm hopeful for it, so. Well, our poll for last week, I alluded to, was a surprising result, because in the poll, we asked, "Will Mother Coral be in the finale of The Acolyte?" Overwhelmingly, people voted yes, 92%. In fact, I think one person was only in the negative in that regard on the YouTube poll. And surprisingly, the result of the episode was that she was not in the episode, which I still find a little bit odd, if I'm being honest. That it was just like this big deal, her exiting in episode 7 the way she did,
Right.
turning into
Yes.
a,
Yeah. That's
a smoke monster or whatever.
Smoke
So
Monster, J.J. Abrams style.
yeah, shout out to Lost, Joey and I's all-time favorite show. Not not really, but, what an experience it was watching Lost.
What a
Over on over on X, it was about the same, 83% saying yes, and, so overwhelmingly going into the finale, people were like, "Oh, I mean, obviously Mother Coral's gonna be in it." I mean, the way she exited the 7th episode, she's super upset, she's enraged, she's angered at Soul especially, and then it's just like, "No, no, she's not gonna be in it anymore." Um which, I mean, I guess if you're, like, banking on a second season, it's like, okay, but it still felt a little bit weird that we didn't see her in this episode, so, Um, yeah, thank you again to all those of you who voted in last week's poll. Keep a lookout for this week's poll, which is, of course, available every week on the YouTube community tab as well as over on the Hoth Hangout X account. Again, that's at the YouTube community tab and the Hoth Hangout X account. Check out this week's poll and cast your vote and have your voice heard. And we will reveal the results of next week's poll on next week's episode of the podcast, episode 90. All right. We've made it through the news, the comments, and the polls. We're about 20 minutes in, which is not too far over where we would normally be. I think both you and I, Joey, thought going into a live episode of the podcast, we'd probably be more so around that 90 to 100-minute mark, probably. Because typically we try to shoot for an hour and we figure, if we're having a little more discourse and conversation with other folks joining us live, it'll probably be closer to that hour and a half mark. So, having said that, do you have any overall thoughts on the 8th episode before we do our dive into the specifics of the episode?
It exceeded my expectations. Now, mind you, they might have been a little bit low, but they still exceeded them. So I when we were going into the reaction video, the first thing I said was, "You and I are optimists, so we're going to continue to hope that this is going to be a good show, that this is going to be a good episode, that it's going to tie things all up together." Didn't necessarily do that last thing, but if it is to continue on with a second season, it all kind of makes sense. But yes, I would have to agree with the commenter earlier saying that there are definitely more questions that were brought up than probably answers that we wanted for the rest of the show. And even some loose ends that we got to tie up. Mother Coral, where you at? What happened? Obviously you're still alive. You're somewhere. It's gonna be like the smoke monster in Lost. Seriously, like what was that about?
Yeah, my favorite one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time is 101 unanswered lost questions, Joey. And I
There's
just
so
feel like
many.
there's
It's
so
funny.
many. But if we get like 4 seasons of this show, I feel like we're headed towards a video like 101 unanswered questions about the Acolyte. So, I don't know. We'll see if that ever actually happens. I would honestly be very surprised if they greenlight 3 more seasons of this show. Um,
Oh
but,
my.
can you imagine how the discourse around that would be?
The roller coaster and emotions that will be thrown across the universe.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah. It's also worth noting before we get into the meat of our discussion that I think the Acolyte, I don't know if it's done more to separate Star Wars fans or unite them. And I guess it in many ways kind of reflects politics these days, kind of. I don't, not to like
Mm,
make it a political thing or anything, but just like in the way that politics feels like, there's people who are going
it's
more and
very
more this way and more this
mhm,
way.
very
Polarized, yeah.
binary. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Either you're with us or you're
Right.
against us. I can't. Somebody said that. Who said
Yeah.
that?
Either you're with me or you're my enemy. Wow. Well, after all, only Sith deals in in absolutes. So, um, I mean, yeah, you and I kind of fall in that camp of I'm always looking, even if I'm watching a show that was pretty consistently disappointed by in the last 7 or 8 weeks. Um, I I found myself still being hopeful that it could change from week to week. Now, obviously, we didn't really get the payoff for that in the end, but it's kind of the approach that you and I take to watching most episodes, even if it's something we don't enjoy as much. So, yeah, Kid Caduceus is saying just put JJ on the second season. We'll get 1001 more questions. JJ, the king of more questions rather than answers. Yeah.
and that lens flare.
And the lens flare. You gotta love the lens flare. So, well, the finale episode opens up with Osha having that helmet that's like I've heard people online referring to it as the Magneto helmet because it like blocks out the force from being,
Hmm.
influenced or whatever. And she's able to see the future while Kamir was reaching out to her. And to be completely honest, and I would love to open this up to chat too. To be completely honest, I didn't really understand why Chimere is, his eyes are going black in the same way that we saw Torben's go black in the flashback episodes when he
Mm-hmm.
was reaching out. I don't know if that was something that OSHA was doing to him or something else. I'm not really sure how to interpret that. So I gotta say, like, pretty quickly off the bat in this episode, I was a little bit confused. But the really important part of this scene is that she and her vision, OSHA sees May killing Soul, reaching her hand out. And I think even she mentions that in the vision, there's a lightsaber. Obviously, we now know the irony of that vision, as we find out by the end of the episode, is she's not actually looking at her sister, she's looking at herself. Which once they arrive on Brindok and you see Osha in black and May in white, you're like, oh, okay, I see where we're going here. Or at least I kind of felt like I saw that one coming, that it was going to be Osha who
Right.
kills him rather than May. So that's where the episode starts off. But I mean, do you have any insight into what was happening here in terms of like Kymir's eyes going black, allowing Osha to have the vision, or what do you think was going on?
I mean, the only thought that I really had here was because she seemed to be in a bit of pain or
Mhm.
whatever it was. So I don't know if it worked. The that Cortosis helmet kind of works both ways, where you can't let the force out and the force can't come in. And so I don't know if that had anything. So it was kind of bouncing around in there. That's kind of maybe that was what kind of messed her up a bit. But maybe it also enhances the force. I don't know. I'm not a force. I don't have a master's in force technology. So, if that's something that happened and she was able to focus and kind of see the future, because that's basically what she ended up seeing. So I don't know, and especially the part with his eyes kind of going black, didn't really understand that either because it didn't like Mother Coral wasn't around. Obviously she wasn't trying to do anything. But was it because of yeah, I have no idea what I have no idea. So I'd be interested in what other people say about that.
Right. I mean, Spy on Sports said supposedly Osha was invading Kymir's mind, but he was able to overcome her control, which I guess it would make sense as the daughter of this witch who had the ability that she somehow like had this like repressed within her ability that just like once she puts on this helmet, it's like boom, it comes out and she's able to use it. Um, Kid Caduceus says, "I only have an associates in the force." Yeah, me too, me too. But yeah, so I mean, more or less, I think it's the way we're intended to interpret that, as Spy on Sports, alluded to, is that this is OSHA doing it to him, but it's, I mean, it feels like something she's obviously not maybe intentionally doing to him, and just as a byproduct of kind of what's going on within the helmet, and obviously you said she's in pain, so maybe it's like this release of hate in a way, maybe I don't know exactly, but anyways, not to harp too much on the on the first scene of the episode, but,
I'm gonna be here
like we
for like
said,
hours.
yeah, yeah. The important thing there is that in her vision, she sees who she thinks is May killing Soul, who we obviously know by the end of the episode is just her. So meanwhile, May and Soul are, still together, and May has been captured by Soul, as we saw. I guess it would have been back in episode 6 that we last saw this. But she escapes the cuffs and jumps in the escape ship, and she she has the line, "See you in hell, Jedi." And I was like, you and I were like, "Oh man, well, Disney Plus is going hard these days."
It did
Um,
remind me of that one line in Empire Strikes Back early on when Han goes over. They're in Hoth, and Han has to go try to rescue Luke, and whoever's telling him, "Oh, you can't go out there, you can't go out there," to Han, and then he's like, "Well, I guess I'll see you in hell." Like,
yeah.
what? Why is so angry? Why did you? Why did we go there?
Yeah, yeah. This was one of the many moments in this episode that I feel like took a line more or less directly from another Star Wars source. And like you said, they
Mhm.
took this from Empire, and they're like, "Yeah, I love that 'See you in hell' line that Han says. That's classic." It doesn't have quite the same like rogue-like quality to it when when
Right.
May is
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
it as when Han does, but it's always kind of fun to get a reprisal of a quote like that. But what I was more interested in this scene was, and I mentioned this to you in the reaction, it's like I feel like Soul, I love the guy, I do, but he just feels like he never senses anything. Like, this guy is a Jedi master, And it feels like at almost once an episode, there's a moment where it's like, "Really, Soul? Like, you couldn't sense that or tell that that was coming?"
Right.
Um, but, she electrocutes him, escapes in the escape pod, and, um, the next thing that happens, people can hate on episode 8 or just The Acolyte as much as they want, and people might feel more positively or negatively about this episode. This is probably my personal, just in terms of plot, least favorite
Mhm.
part of the episode, because I literally not only do I not understand it, I think it's a ridiculous decision. Um, so, he starts to pursue May after she goes out of the escape pod, through the rings of this planet, which did look pretty cool, I will add. I thought that scene
Yes.
looked neat. Basil, I don't know what animal we're calling him. I've heard people call him a badger or a gopher or whatever he is. He disables the ship. I I don't I don't understand why. Can is there anyone who can, like, give me a solid or even, like, slightly explainable reason for why Basil turns on Soul?
Anyone? I
I
have
mean,
no
this is
idea.
someone who the Jedi brought to be their tracker. Um, a and I don't know, like, the narrative I feel like that this episode is trying to show is that, like, Soul got what he deserved in the end. When the whole time, it's like Soul is the character we care the most about. Like, he's the one who it felt like we were growing to like as and then it, like, casts Soul as the antagonist this entire episode. It's like
Mhm.
Basil's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna turn to the dark side too." He doesn't think that probably, but that was kind of the vibe the vibe that I was getting. I just yeah, I mean, let's turn to chat and maybe see what some of the responses are. Acolyte writer's favorite activity, copy paste from the Skywalker saga. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Mariah, shout out to Mariah saying, "What was Basil doing?"
I mean, yeah, I mean, he was flying, he was locking in on her. I was curious of what he was going to do. Was he going to shoot her down? What was the plan here? I don't think he has a tractor beam on that thing.
Mhm.
So what was his plan here? And then Basil does the thing. I don't know if they actually like I guess they undo the weaponing system. By the way, how does Basil know how to do that? These are just things that we have to think about, and one of the additional questions that have come out of this episode, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was probably the moment in this episode where something blatantly happened that I was like, "That makes no sense." Sure,
Mm-hmm.
there were a couple other moments that were like, "I don't get why they did that with that character," and that didn't feel like it flows with the plot. But overall, if I had to point to one thing that I was just like, "That that doesn't make sense," it was this moment in the episode. Um, so I don't know. I'm feeling differently about about Basil. I thought he was cute like 4 episodes ago, and now I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Yeah. Uh, May does have OSHA's little tool thingy. Oh, that
Yeah.
could be a good explanation. So Basil can't distinguish between May and OSHA, and he's like, "Oh, May has the tool thingy, so that must be OSHA, so I'm gonna defend her?" Is that what's happening there?
Well, remember he was able to determine who May and Osha was earlier, because he was trying to remember he
That's
was able
true.
to sniff out May before, so he knows that's May. Just because she got a different colored suit on or whatever, I think Basil would know. But yeah, it might be
Yeah.
Pip. Maybe Pip is the thing that is confusing Basil a little bit. Can't believe we're talking about this so much.
King Caduceus also said, "Then the next time you see him, he's with the other Jedi." Huh? Yeah. Yeah, and then he starts helping
Right.
the Jedi when they arrive on
Yeah, yeah,
Bryndahl.
yeah.
So it's clearly like he's either protecting May specifically, who he thinks is Osha, or he just hates Soul. It's one of those
Right.
2 things. I don't know, but the writers forgot about that detail. Maybe May and Osha smell the same. They're the same, so he's trying to protect Osha.
They are the same though, as we've
Yeah,
determined
okay.
later.
And I wanna get into that with you too because, like, Yeah, I'll save the they're the same
Yeah, I
thing
think I
till
think
we're done.
they'll come up later. They'll come up a little later.
Yeah, 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 because I have thoughts on that as well. But the senator we were talking about earlier, that's the next scene in this episode. Senator Rayencourt has that conversation with Vernestra Rowe, um, and there is a quote in that scene that says, "When you're looking up to heroes, you don't have to face what's right in front of you." So very clearly, this guy obviously does not like the Jedi. Feels like he's still probably in terms of the Senate, like in a minority position of disliking the Jedi, because it
Hmm.
feels like the rest of his colleagues don't have that same level of distaste or displeasure with the way the Jedi do things. We don't really get a ton of insight into why he's so mistrusting of the Jedi. But honestly, I don't blame him. Like literally half, if not more, of the Jedi in this show make decisions that are
Very
like you
questionable.
like non-Jedi. Yeah. Like Indara's like, you know what, guys, we're not gonna tell anybody. Ernesto Rowe is like, you know what, guys, we're gonna conceal this. We're gonna conceal this and not tell the High Council. Like all these Jedi in this show just making decisions that maybe they're driving home the senator's point. Maybe the Jedi should be distrusted. At least certainly the Jedi and the Acolyte, it would seem like. But
And it's worth noting right here that that is what a lot of the people, a lot of the fans are not happy with, is the way that the Jedi are being portrayed in this series. And
mhm.
you even mentioned it a little bit, a little later on. We won't get into it too much, but how they're all kind of just cops and they're just kind of running around,
Yeah.
and there's still like a little military force, and that's not what you really expect Jedi to be.
And not only are they just like functioning more or less effectively as like a police force, but they're like inept. Like they get to the planet
Right.
and these are Jedi and they're like, "Where do we go? What do we do?" And then there's like Basil comes up. He's like, "Follow me, guys." Like somehow the Basil knows like a better sense of direction about where to find them than I don't know. Tangent, I guess. Sorry.
Hmm.
But hey, shout out to Aurora. Welcome in. Um Reminder, these aren't real Jedi. They're botanists and geologists. Yeah.
Botanist.
Yeah, shout out to episode 7 where we saw kind of the inner workings of what it meant to discover what a vergence is in the Force if you're a Jedi, but, we'll let that one slide. Like, what did you say? It was a vergence detector, right?
The virgins detector. Yeah, get that on
Uh,
eBay.
yeah, exactly. And then the next scene in the episode, this is the one that has a lot of people talking. Um, and this will probably be, worth asking, probably several questions to those of you watching this live. We see a character who is very obvious, has a very obvious resemblance to Plagueis. It's clear now after the episode that yes, this is Plagueis. Like we saw from our comment earlier, the music that plays when this character appears on screen is the same as the music in episode 3 when Palpatine is talking to Anakin at the space opera scene or whatever. Um, and so Plagueis is in this episode for 5 seconds. I I I'm not sure what they want us to think based on this. And I'm sure a lot of that is intentional. I think as it was happening, I was so caught up in this is amazing that Plagueis is
Yeah.
in a real Star Wars show. I was just like flabbergasted that it had actually happened. And then I thought about it a little bit after the episode and I'm like, is he learning from May and Osha how to create life in the Force?
Hmm.
Or is he the reason that they were made as a Vergence? What does this mean for how Plagueis supposedly is the one that created Anakin? I mean, these were all there's the zoom in, the close up on his
Zoom
face.
in and
I like that,
enhance.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, what did you think just seeing him on screen for the first time, first of all?
I had those same feel. If you watch the reaction video, you and I kind of geek out a little bit about seeing Plagueis there for the first time in live action. Again, you and I had read the book. Well, I read it. You did, like, I don't know, 5 times speed on your audiobook. I forget.
2.25, baby.
2.25. And so it's exciting. It's exciting to see that this is now, because at this point he's not he's canon as far as we know that he exists,
Mhm.
because of Palpatine in the opera house with Anakin. but to now see, you know, possibly see more of this story, I think that's more exciting to me. So the potential of what this could be, kind of just that's what I'm excited about because we want to know more about Plagueis, kind of in that canon role in that world. If we do bring in some of the legends, sourcing, that's great. But just the potential of what's to come here. I mean, literally, we could this could be a spin-off all of a sudden, just like Plagueis, and that this could be a
Mm.
whole other thing. Maybe we don't see Plagueis anymore in Acolyte, but we see Plagueis the series or something like that.
Which is ironic because when this show was announced, that is what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
gonna be like a Plagueis Palpatine story, till we got more information on it after the fact, but I was like, "This is gonna be so cool." And then obviously we got the news of what it really was, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so it's probably not gonna be Plagueis." And then and then we actually get Plagueis in the show, so
Yeah.
I'm not anti having Plagueis in this show. It seems like some people are just, like, really upset by the fact that he was included.
Oh, really?
I don't Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that he was included. I think it's really cool, first of all. I
Mm-hmm.
think where they have to be careful is if you bring him in a way that somehow, like, affects the way basically affects the legacy of Anakin.
Yeah.
Um, if that is,
I think
like, tweaked with or messed with in any way, and they're
I'm
kind of
gonna.
already doing that.
I was about to say I'm gonna go ahead and say that they're towing that line, if not already leaped over that line.
Yeah, so I don't know if they've towed the line too far to where they could bring it back and make it feel, like, satisfactory, like, in line with what we know from the prequels, in a way that a lot of Star Wars fans would be okay with, but, based off of what we've seen in the first season, maybe they just say, "Well, who cares? We're gonna do what we want." Which if that's the road they take, then I'd be willing to say, "Well, maybe it was a mistake to include him in live action," but at the moment, I'm just I'm just kind of excited to actually see him,
Hmm.
but I'm curious kind of, how that will affect the future of The Acolyte as a show or really just live action Star Wars. Like you said, a spinoff with Plagueis would be so cool. Kid Caduceus earlier said, "I love the way that Padawan always irked the crap out of Minestra." Yeah, with the senator when he's like,
He's just like,
he's in
what?
the yeah, she's like, "You let him in where?" But in reference to Plagueis, Spy on Sports said, "If Plagueis is a Sith acolyte, then he's learning about May Osha Virgint's creation of life. He's the Sith master, then he likely created Osha, May and Osha." And that's the other thing. I think in terms of the timeline, Plagueis should not be that old at this moment in time. Um, like, and that's another thing. Like, does he even know Chimere? Is Chimere drawn to the dark because of Plagueis?
Hmm.
Is Plagueis like his master, or is Plagueis just this lurking, looming dark force who's waiting to maybe usurp Chimere as the Sith master? I guess we can call Chimere that now that he's got
Hmm.
Osha as his Padawan, but lots of speculation in regards to Plagueis and the future of his role in this show or just Star Wars as a whole. But one more comment from Spy on Sports as well. Maybe they say Anakin's legacy. Oh, they save Anakin's legacy by Plagueis making May and Osha as a beta test for what eventually became Anakin. Yeah, I mean, maybe they'd have to be careful how they do it though, because if they're not careful, then it's like if it's a beta test but the Jedi still know about it, how does that
Right.
affect the tone they take with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in the Senate or in the High Council meeting in The Phantom Menace when they're like, "What? His midi-chlorians are higher than Master Yoda's. We've never seen this before." Like, I
Very
don't know. I
force
don't.
sensitive.
Yeah, my favorite line from was that episode 7 or it
That
was
was
episode
episode
7.
7, I think. Yeah.
He's like,
Very force
"Mi-
sensitive.
the midi-chlorians are so high, very force sensitive." It was like,
Looks at the camera.
yeah, 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 yeah. Anyways, um, so in the next scene, Vernestra is talking to someone over the comms. "I need to get a message to him. It's urgent," is what she says. The response is, "This is highly unorthodox, but I shall see what I can do." Now you and I noted in this scene that the voice sounded a lot like Palpatine,
Hmm.
which would make even less sense
Yep.
than Plagueis being in the show because obviously Palpatine was the apprentice of Plagueis. He was far younger than Plagueis. At this time, I believe canonically,
Around yet.
well, yeah, like I don't think he should be alive yet in terms of how when his current birth date is listed on uh on whatever sites it's listed on, but it would be interesting if it was him. I don't know if anyone else thought that other than us. That was something we just noted during our live reaction, but the voice.
I even looked on IMDb to see if there was a credit
y-
for the voice actor. There was not.
Yeah, but see, even if it was him, would they even credit him with doing it? Because would they
I
want
don't know.
to
I'm
like
not sure.
keep it a
Yeah.
secret? Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So the culmination of the first like 10 or 15 minutes of the episode is that eventually everyone just ends up on Brendock, which in regards to Soul and Osha, like wasn't that where Soul was taking her anyways?
Yes,
Before
that's where they were headed. Yeah.
See, that's also what I didn't really understand. So Soul is taking Osha to Brendock. Osha escapes, still goes to Brendock, or is that just like the last resort and she had to like crash land
Yeah.
there?
Well, remember, yeah, she crash landed there. So I think,
Right.
excuse me, they were in the rings, and then they ended up. She ended up kind of like flying out of control into Brendock.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the culmination of it is that they all end up there. The way that May and Chimera got there, though, did you find that? I mean, I think I just don't really understand their relationship is kind of what it boils down to. But they go from like effectively hating each other to, or no, excuse me, not May and Chimera. It would be Osha and Chimera.
Oh,
They
so
go
yeah.
from effectively like hating each other to now they're gonna travel together to Brendock.
Hmm.
Um, Osha's goal is to, like, reunite with May, but what is Chimera's goal? Like, why is he just taking her there? Because I thought he wanted
Well,
to kill May at that point.
I think that that's what he was saying. He was like, "Well, we'll see who gets to her first."
Okay, okay, I could buy that. Yeah, yeah. Um,
But
so
they
they
agreed
get
to
they
go on the same ship together. Yeah, I don't get all that.
yeah, I was and they also have this weird, like, undertone of romance going on, and you're just like, "What is happening here?" But anyways, so
Always got to be
Soul.
romance.
Yeah, we gotta have it in Star Wars, you know?
Hmm.
So Soul, ends up getting into a lightsaber fight with Chimere in what we referred to in our live reaction as the, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon fight, which
It's
is
great.
pretty fun to see. Yeah. This for me was the best part of the episode. In fact, this scene is probably what holds this episode up as something I would want to watch again, 'cause I felt like just watching this scene, I was like, "Man, I think," and I said this about episode 5, like, this is probably the best lightsaber fight we've seen Disney create, and I would probably apply that label to this lightsaber fight now.
Hmm.
It just felt I think there's something to be said about the cinematic, uh, just awesomeness of a one-on-one lightsaber duel with nothing else going on. The scene is well lit. You had all of the awesome, like, Matrix, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon style scenes.
Right.
This was my personal favorite part of the episode. What'd you think about
Yeah,
the
and
fight scene?
yeah, I really enjoyed the fight, the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, fight styles, and also Osha and May kind of got into a fight as well, uh, and they did a cool quick cut where I think they were both kicking or something like that, and then it quick cut to Soul and Chimere doing they were their lightsabers kind of crossing. So, yeah, easily best part of easily best part of the episode.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it
Excuse me.
personally. Oh, you're good, yeah. Um, so yeah, Soul and Chimera get into this lightsaber fight. Soul, after this awesome epic duel, eventually defeats Chimere. But then, out of nowhere, May steals his lightsaber somehow, which goes
Hmm.
back to what I was my point earlier of I love Soul, but the dude has like very little awareness. It seems like half the time. Great
Hmm.
lightsaber duelist. Needs a little bit more awareness, Soul. I don't know how we got there. But yeah, so May steals the lightsaber. Um, Ymir says to her, "Strike him down, and your journey will be complete." Which also
Sounds familiar.
doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Like another direct, quote or line um, drawn from previous Star Wars sources. Spy on Sports also saying they're here recently. Only Ocean knew where May and Soul were going because of her vision. Amir agreed to take her since he knew where to go. Okay, that would make sense. Yeah, yeah. I guess I misinterpreted that scene when I watched this. I wasn't understanding why they were going together, but if it was kind of like a we're gonna be cordial so that I can go to kill May, even though you're trying to go save May. Is that kind of what I'm understanding there? I guess then. Um, and Kid Caduceus also said, "This was a great fight. The wire stunts took me out of it, though." Okay, so I mean, there's
It's the
definitely
opposite.
something to
Yeah.
be said of like an opposite opinion about how they felt about how Kid Caduceus felt about sort of the crouching tiger, hidden dragon Matrix style. I think that's honestly like a really fair point and a really fair criticism.
Absolutely.
I think it sort of just depends on like the style of fight scenes that certain people enjoy. There's definitely an element of realism that goes out the door when you incorporate stuff like the wire scenes. So it felt more of like a nod to like martial arts films by doing that, which I think there have been elements of that kind of throughout the show of The Acolyte. So I felt like it was in line with where the show has been, and I didn't feel like it was jarring in that regard. But I could totally see the opposite effect for various people depending on how you feel about wire scenes and in fight scenes. So yeah, Mariah saying, "Do it,
Do it.
strike me down." Crouching Jedi, hidden Sith. Yeah, exactly. So this is the moment of realization. This is supposed to be like the point of the episode where it's like, "Oh my gosh, like they're the same person." We learn this right after this happens.
Right.
Um, and I was thinking a lot about why this didn't hit for me. And I think it's because many times throughout this show, it feels like there's information that's revealed in a dramatic fashion to a character in the show that we as the audience already know about. And so
Mm.
it takes away some of the effect of the reveal. Like imagine how much more like thought-provoking and powerful that would have been in that moment of that reveal if we didn't know that yet from prior information earlier
Right.
in another episode. So I think that's kind of something I identified as being something that this show does. It informs the audience before it informs the character in the show, and then it leaves the audience kind of not caring when the character finds out because we already knew about the thing the character's finding out about.
Right.
So May and Osha are finding out, and it's like, yeah, we do already. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah. But nonetheless, that is the reveal that happens. They're the same person. I want to ask the question, pose it. What do you think this means for the show? Like, how is being the same person? How does that translate to looking different than being twins in the grand scheme of what May and Osha mean to the Acolyte or Star Wars as a whole?
I think it right now it explains a lot of what has happened in previous episodes. There have been a lot of kind of twin moments, if you kind of remember. There's like she can kind of hear Osha will hear May kind of in her thoughts. She had a kind of a vision of hers too, if you remember when they turned into like the youth version of themselves. So up to this point, I think it kind of explains that like why that kind of stuff is happening. One thing I was thinking about is it because they are one person or however you want to put it, one being? Is that why things like when we thought May was dead, or when they all thought May was dead, in the in the fortress there, was it because she can't die because Osha's alive? Is it one of those things? Because one is alive, you can't kill the other, or if there's some rules involved there that we have to take in consideration. Does that make now Osha even stronger as a Sith acolyte because she's able to kind of live forever as long as May's still around? So that these are just types of things that could happen. In my mind, if that kind of pans out, we'll see. But because they are one. Um, that means that maybe you can't kill off one because the other one exists.
Hmm. I guess in that same light, what's the consequence of managing to kill one of them? Does that mean the other one dies?
Or
Hmm.
do you have to kill both in order to kill them?
Right. Yeah. Does that mean like you got to do the whole like
Like
kill them at the
Horcruxes.
same? Yeah, that's what I was thinking of too. Shout out to all the Harry Potter fans. You gotta each twin is like a Horcrux. You gotta like kill
Yeah.
both of them at the same time to kill them as a oneness. I don't know how that works, but yeah, I mean, if they do have another season of the show, like how does their identity as literally the same person, what does that mean for the story? I'm curious to see how they develop that more. Um, but then right after that, this is the scene where Soul confesses that he killed Mother Anastasia in front of Osha. He actually doesn't. I don't think he knows initially
Right.
that Osha is standing there, and then is when he like fully confesses after it's been revealed. Um, I the thing that I continue to not really understand about Soul is, or really just the show as a whole, it paints what he did in an obviously negative light. Like he is the worst person in this show. When the reality is, in this scene, he's the best person standing there amongst the four of them. Um, and in the episode 7 flashback scene where Mother Anastasia turns into the smoke monster and Soul is standing there, and there's this fight about to break loose between Mother Coral and Torben, and you see May's body start to be literally like evaporated into this black smoke. Like you're a Jedi, you're standing there, you're seeing a child being what you would assume is killed, being turned into smoke. Like where does the I don't understand like why what he did is just seen in the light of this show as this awful thing. You know what I mean? Um, so it's almost I almost this whole scene wanted it to be just like, "Soul, just, like, tell her what actually happened." Like, he just has this guilt about it, and he doesn't say, "Well, I was defending May. I was literally trying to make it so that a girl would not die. That is why I killed your mother in the best interest of your sister." And I just wish he would say that in this scene. So, I'll get off my soapbox and ask you and those in chat, what did you think about this scene? Because right after, she just starts to force choke him.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand the decisions of the Jedi time and time again in this episode, in this series. So definitely for this one, yeah, he could have. I mean, at any point, if someone told the truth, this season is over. You know what I mean? Like the entire thing is just done because you tell the High Council, you tell the Senate, you get a slap on the wrist. I don't know. You're gonna tell me that Jedi have never kind of accidentally or had some circumstances where they really needed to make a quick decision, made the essential wrong decision, and what happens to them then? I just feel like they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be infallible. I understand all of that, but but it just doesn't seem like they're allowed to be in this particular show. And I don't know. It doesn't hold for me. And then,
Yeah.
then, then, right, she goes on to like force choke him here. Which, by the way, I think you mentioned earlier, pretty dark. We've been seeing some pretty dark imagery throughout this season. I think of like just kind of the dead bodies of the Jedi. I remember Jekki, Yord. Those were kind of dark images, kind of horror images with Chimere and everything. So there was this kind of sealed the deal with this force choke kill.
Yeah, honestly, I think if I've been pretty critical of the show, but if there was something I was going to credit it for, I think it doesn't shy away from kind of the brutality of the dark side of the Force.
Mhm.
Now how they go about, like, depicting the dark side in the end is kind of wonky to me, but they certainly don't shy away from that aspect of it, which I think, you know, given a maybe little better script, I feel like that part of this show did work well. The scene with Jackie you mentioned, the Force choke here, really showing, like, the brutal aspect of the dark side of the Force, which it should be, it's the dark side of the Force. Um So, like we said, Soul confesses that he killed Mother Anastasia. Osha begins to force choke him, and of course, she's picked up the lightsaber at this point, and it had kind of gotten cracked from when it was thrown. And you see that there's the kyber crystal inside. You noted it in our live reaction. You're like, oh, you can see the kyber crystal. Which actually, so when Disney purchased Star Wars, they actually canonically changed the way that red lightsabers specifically are created. Prior to whatever year that happened, 2012, when Disney acquired Star Wars, red lightsabers were made using synthetic crystals. When Disney purchased Star Wars, the
Mm.
way that red lightsabers are formed was by this process known as bleeding the crystal, and it's really just the release of anger and hatred. And so you actually get to see that happen in this scene, which I actually
Cool.
thought that was pretty cool. We had never really seen anything like that in a live
Live
action
action
or
for sure.
or animated Star Wars for that matter. This feels like something that we would see in live in animated Star Wars. So to see it in live action, it was like, ooh, that looks really cool. I like the way that looks. So you see OSHA's turning to the dark side, so to speak, in real time. I wouldn't say that it felt backed or grounded by a descent that made me understand why she took that step. Like, if you look at the prequels and you see, like, the death of Anakin's mother and
Mhm.
the fear of losing Padme, just all of this culminating in this anguish, and killing Mace Windu is the final blow, and you see how this culminates in Anakin, and you really, like, feel his turn to the dark side. Like,
Mhm.
it's a progression you've gone through with the character.
Right.
It obviously doesn't hit the same here in the same way when May turns from being I guess, an ex-Jedi to what is now a Sith acolyte. Um, so while it was really cool, I just wish I would've, like, had a little bit more skin in the game in terms of being
Yeah.
like, "Wow," like, I wanted to feel bad for her, and it was like I couldn't even do that in this scene. So, um, yeah, I mean, visually really cool. Didn't have some of the backing to it I would've liked,
Right.
but
And I think she had mentioned it a little bit about how she was unable to let go of this hate, let go of. So I think it exists. I think it's warranted. I think I think what happened
Mhm,
here makes sense. But like you said, we didn't live years with this with her. What like we did
mhm,
with Anakin. It was what 6 weeks. And
yeah,
we weren't even privy to any of the Jedi training, any of her struggles with Soul over the years. Maybe that's something that can come up at some points. Um, but yeah, oh, Kikadusia says here they tapped into the bleeding ish in the Star Wars Vision, the Ninth Jedi. Yeah,
true.
I was wondering if
Yeah,
Visions had something to do with it. So yeah, so thank you for reminding us. But yeah, so to see this now in live action was actually very cool, and but like I said, I think having not seen her Jedi trials or being trained as a Jedi, I think that was only to our not to our benefit, unfortunately.
right, yeah. Yeah, also shout out to the Star Wars Vision reference, like,
Yeah, that's nice.
probably the most underrated Star Wars piece of media, in my opinion. I love Star Wars Visions personally, but anyways, side note. So Vernestra and the Jedi land on Brindok, and she immediately senses Chimere, and so this is the key moment in the episode where you're like, "Oh, there is definitely a connection between her and him."
Mm.
And there was even, like, hints at that in previous episodes, like, you saw the scars on his back. We know Vernestra Rowe carries a purple whip lightsaber. The scars on his back look like they could have been made by that weapon. So there was already a lot of speculation that this was going to be the case, that it was going to be like a former apprentice and master situation. But that is confirmed in the episode. When she lands, she senses him immediately. He senses her immediately. And so that is probably largely where they're hoping to go towards with the second season of this show, if it ends up playing out. But um, and then May shows where to escape, I should say, in the next part, where she fell when the bridge broke. Now, this is, of course, right after Soul has died, and when he when it was happening and Osha was force choking him, and then it happened in its completion, my first thought was, "Surely he's not just, like, dead, like, is that the end of Soul?" Um, how do you I mean, before we move on to this part, how do you feel about the way that they ended Soul's character? Did it feel good, bad, satisfactory, a little bit of a letdown? How are you feeling when you saw that happened?
I think I was okay with it. He even had that line, while she's choking him, something along the line of like, "It's okay," like this is what you have to do. Which that was an interesting line for me. I think out of the everything that happened there, because it's almost like he's allowing her to go to the dark side. That's
Mm,
that was where I'm like, I don't see the reasoning behind that. I would like to get a little bit more information on what that meant. um, it kind of reminded me of when in Force Awakens, when Kylo kills Han Solo, his dad.
mm,
There was a kind of a moment there when it seemed like after he had done it, after he put the lightsaber through his torso. By the way, can Han Solo make it through that? Maybe he is alive. Who knows? Um, um,
lightsabers are lethal again, that's all I gotta say.
that's right. Yeah. So when that happened, he kind of had a moment there. He kind of strokes his face, and I think Kylo says like "thank you" or something like that to him. It kind of reminded me of that whole exchange too. But yeah, but here he's kind of just saying like, yeah, go ahead and do it. I don't know if it was more of like I deserve this. Maybe that's kind of what he was saying. But yeah, just this whole thing. I mean, the way that the rest of the season went, this didn't actually surprise me. But at the same time, yeah, I did like Soul. I did like kind of what he was doing. There were a lot of things like you said that we questioned of like, how did you not know that? How did you not figure that out? But he was a pretty good with lightsaber, which is always fun to have. Unfortunately, we will not be seeing that anymore. But
Mm.
I
Oh
so
sevens.
no sevens. But I think yeah, I was okay with it. But I again, it just leads me to be like, what, who we even up against in next season? Who's going to be able to fight this?
Yeah, like, who are we rooting for at this point in the show? That's a question I would ask, like,
Hmm.
season 2 of this show starts, I mean, who you rooting for?
Right.
It feels like all the people we were rooting for have died at this point. All especially, like, for what it's worth, I loved Jeckie as a character. I thought she was probably one of the brighter spots of the show. See ya, Jeckie. Soul,
Yeah.
as much as it seems like he can't sense anything, I love him as a character,
Yep.
and then it's like, "Bye, Soul." So I just, like, I don't know who I'm supposed to root
Yeah.
for if there's a
Right.
season 2. Yeah, yeah, Plagueis, I guess.
Plagueis. Yeah, I guess that's true.
I'll root for Plagueis, yeah. Um, so,
Excuse me.
May and Osha showing Osha, where to escape after the death of Soul, and it's the same spot, that she supposedly I got a sneeze coming on. Excuse me. Um, it's supposedly the same spot where she, escaped, back when she fell off the bridge and Soul refused to catch her, which, I guess we don't need to revisit some of the shortcomings of that scene, but, um, so they proceed to escape through this same way that May escaped years before, and then, Vernestra is back at the scene of the scene of the crime, so to speak. She's walking around Soul's body, and is beginning to sense all what happened. And a lot of what she's sensing is actually from 16 years prior. She senses like the death of Mother Anastasia. So she's getting like the full complete picture here, while the rest of the Jedi task force is is backing her up and supporting her here. But
They're we should put Benny Hill music to the rest of the Jedi.
yeah, exactly. Um, so then there's this scene where Osha and May reunite at the tree that we saw that first scene with them in episode 3. When they're with the butterfly, they reunite there towards the end of this episode, and Kymir, finds them. He says, "If I can find you, the Jedi will be able to find you too." Um, and what happens next is also something I think left me feeling a little bit confused. So Osha agrees to become the apprentice of Kymir, to become the acolyte, if he promises to let May go. But part of the deal is that he requires as part of the deal is he has to wipe May's mind. The Jedi can't use her to track them. My first thought here was, well, first of all, it was like, whoa, he can do that? That's crazy.
Hmm. Men in Black.
um, yeah, Men in Black. But then my second thought, which is kind of a more, I guess, less surface level thought, more deep to the plot, is um, why does May not just go with them? Um, like, is it because he wants to, like, he knows or she knows who he is, Chimere, or
Right.
like if she's with them, then it feels like based on the way that the episode was going, it was like, all right, all three of us are gonna ride off into the sunset.
Right.
Osha's gonna train with Chimere, and
Yeah.
May is
That's
just
a good
gonna
point.
kind of like live out the days being close to her sister. I didn't really understand the full transition there
Yeah, I don't
into
know
why that happened.
if it's if it's the there must only be two. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. If he
Mm,
wants to stay true to that, I mean, there isn't like two in the you don't get to bring a plus one. You know what I mean? Like I think that's just because he very much mentioned earlier how truly badly he wanted to have a pupil when he was talking to Soul back then. So I think that's a huge thing, um, that he wants this pupil, and to end everything that he had gone through with May, that just didn't work out, and I think he basically wants to kill her anyway. So I think that's the motivation behind it, however strong or weak people may think, but I think deep down, that's what he wants.
mm. Yeah, parent trap swap, but make it Star Wars. Yeah, with the whole like switching from good to bad thing going on. Yeah. Spy on Sports also said his ship only holds two people in the cockpit. I mean, that honestly might be.
Yeah,
I mean, I could buy that.
yeah,
Yeah. So he wipes May's mind. She's left with literally zero memory almost. The only thing she can remember is like fragments of her childhood. But ultimately, the purpose is that so the Jedi can't, use her to track Osha and Chimere. So the Jedi capture May in what I thought was like a super cheesy, like, "Don't move. We're here to
yeah,
arrest you." Like, can we please stop with like treating the Jedi like there's some like task force coming out here? Like, I'm gonna read you your Miranda rights now. It's like okay.
yeah.
um, I just thought it was a little bit cheesy when that scene happened, but this is the scene that really I was shocked that this is the direction it
Yep.
took. Vernestra is, whispering something to Soul, um, and you see her in the next scene when she's speaking with the Senate, and she literally just not only does she continue to lie, she elevates the lie. She makes it even bigger. She's like, "Yep, Soul was the one that killed those other 3 Jedi, who were part
Yeah.
of back on Brendok, those 4 who were there. He betrayed them, killed all 3 of them, and he was just rogue, not a great guy." And that's how the story ends. It's like I don't know what this show wants us to believe in. I guess that's a good way of putting it. Like I get that the show is trying to, and I feel like this is ironic coming from me because I like grayness in my Star Wars. I think like Qui Gon is one of my favorite characters. The Bendu in Star Wars Rebels is an amazing character, but I think I distinguish grayness of characters as something different from kind of what we see in this show. I think ultimately you can have gray characters, and I think that's great. But I think there still needs to be an established sense of, what is the good team and what is the bad team.
Right.
Even if the good guys don't always make good decisions, like we saw with Soul, choosing not to tell the Jedi Council what happened, or if the bad guys, don't always make bad decisions, like if Osha or May did something out of love of their sister or someone else, I think that is where the grayness comes in. But it feels like they kind of just do away with. It's almost like they switched it instead of it being
Hmm.
like a gray thing. They're like, well, now instead of there being like the good side and the bad side, it's like the good side is really just the bad side if you think about it, and the bad side really is just the good side if you think about it.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Nah, that's not exactly how grayness works in Star Wars."
Right.
But especially when the whole concept of the original trilogy and the prequels and even the sequels is like the light side of the Force, the dark side of the Force. Like
Hmm.
it's very clear which one is a good thing and which one is a bad thing. So I don't know. Another soapbox, I guess. But what did you think about Vernestra and the way she went about telling the Senate what happened with Soul?
I was shocked. I was very shocked because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, he's gone. All four of them are dead now. Anybody who would have had any type of repercussions because of what happened on Brendock are literally all dead. So and because Vernestra didn't know up until this point exactly what happened until she went to Brendock, had her force, senses, and were able to piece together all that had happened there. So anybody who would have actually gotten in trouble at this point are all gone. So this would have been the best time to just say, "Listen, this is what happened. Here's, I'm a Jedi, everybody. I was able to sense these things. Here's a story from start to finish." And then we could have been like, "Oh, okay, that all checks out. That does make sense." But just to continually, like you said, elevate this lie for whatever reason, just really
Mm,
doesn't make sense. You know, again, I did not read all the High Republic books. I don't know Vernestra's past. I don't know if this is something that other people will say, "Yep, seems about right." Like I don't know. So maybe that's something you and I are missing that we're lacking. We don't have that understanding of this character, so maybe that is something. So I'm going to put a pin in that and say maybe that is the reason. But without that piece of knowledge, this just doesn't
mm,
make sense. Why would you why would you hold yourself, the Jedi Order, in such high regard if you can't make decisions and make choices that are for the better of the people? So so I'm with you on that. And she seems sketch. I don't know where she's gonna end up. Um and yeah, so I think that's just kind of that's where we end up with her. Is that you asked what are we supposed to think? I think we're supposed to think that she's not right, that she is not um all Jedi, you know. So we got to figure that out.
yeah, and then maybe that's another thing the show does do well is that it inspires me to want to read High Republic stuff because I look at the character of Venestra and I'm like, how in the world could she be doing that? Like, it makes me want to like go out of my way to read supplementary content and be like, oh, that's more about her character. That maybe that is why she would make that decision, or maybe conversely, like, huh, that makes it even weirder that she's making that decision. So, yeah, maybe some High Republic novels will have to be in our future, but. So she speaks with the Senate, continues to lie, propagates this lie that Soul is the one that killed everyone on Brindock, and he's responsible for all of this, kind of concealing it all. We see her in the next scene interrogating May after the fire. Cue the Billy Joel, and Vernestra really just wants May to help her find Chimere. Um, and so she's getting bits and pieces out of her what she can and not managing much. But she brings up OSHA. May seems really confused. She's like, OSHA, like she kind of remembers or something. But so it seems like where the direction they're going is Ernestra tracking down Chimere and OSHA is how they would approach the beginning of a second season if it did happen. But I mean, just like think about it from that perspective of a second season for a second. this might be reiterating something I said earlier, so apologies if this sounds repetitive. Who is the character who, like, all right, pan like pan to scene. It's the first episode of season 2. You're looking at like, which is the character that's like, "Oh, that's gonna be, like, our person we root for this season." Like, we
Right.
just saw OSHA, like, uh, choke her former master, like, no sympathy for her. May killed a bunch of Jedi all season. Kymir's obviously evil. Like, Vernestra is just a jerk, like, throwing Soul's memory under the bus, saying he killed all these people. Like, there's no one alive who I wanna root for. How is the 2nd season yeah, like, I guess Plagueis again, to go back to what we were talking about
Hmm.
earlier, but, uh,
Rooting for Plagueis. That's where we ended up.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, talking turd in chat saying poor soul. I agree. I agree.
I agree.
Poor,
Yep, we all
poor,
agree.
poor soul. I feel like they did soul dirty, but so Chimera and Osha are back on the unknown planet where they were training previously, which is where the episode opened up. And there's that kind of that weird, like, are they master apprentice? Are they like, is there a little bit of romance going on there that they're holding
Hmm.
hands? And so it's like maybe that's just that dark side thing. It's like I don't know how that
Hmm.
works, but um, I
You
didn't.
know what that reminded me of was the book we read with Quinlan Voss and Asajj. What was the name of that book again?
Oh, oh my
Dark
gosh,
Disciple.
yeah,
Dark
Dark
Disciple.
Disciple. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Where you kind of mixed, you mixed in a little bit of force, a little bit of personal feelings and things like that. So I wonder, it feels like that was where we're headed here as well in live
Yeah,
action with these two characters. I mean, it was very very clear, what was it, episode 5, when, he was talking about like things like desire. So I think that's a pretty that you're pretty heavy-handed. That's kind of where you're going. I think that's where this group is going as well with Chimera and Osha.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good call. I like that. This does give me some Quinlan Voss, Asajj Ventress vibes here at the end. Talking Turd also said there's more than enough interest in this story to justify another season, as long as it doesn't go all Twilight. uh,
When so all the Sith become all like shiny and diamondy, like
yeah,
the
yeah,
vampires in Twilight. Yeah,
yeah. Also said the hand holding that killed. It was the hand holding that killed the scene, but it was very Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, yeah, I would agree. Um,
yeah.
it did kind of give that same, two people looking off into the distance, kind of like Empire. Yeah.
I did like that last scene with them though. I will say.
Yeah. I thought it was definitely yeah, I thought it was one of the brighter spots of the episode. Spy on Sports also said, "Who actually is the Acolyte?" That's a good question to pose as well. I mean,
Hmm.
we don't know what Plagueis' relationship to Chimera is, if any. It would appear like that Osha is now the Acolyte, but, you know, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure that's something that they'll probably try to dive into more with a 2nd season, which is something I feel like I've said, like, 15 times in this podcast. Like, they'll probably talk about it in season 2, which
Yeah, one thing.
reiterates, like I mean, yeah, if that's the question we're asking over and over again, it's just like, oh, season 1 just made us ask the question so many times. Maybe they'll talk about it in season 2.
Yeah. We should also mention when you and I went to go watch this episode, for whatever reason, it was titled episode 8. I don't know if anybody else really had that issue.
Yeah.
Up until today, when I finally saw it, it was called The Acolyte. Gibbo actually told us that it was called The Acolyte over in Australia when he was watching it. So, but now it looks like it had updated to The Acolyte, at least on my Disney Plus. And
Mhm.
ironically enough, to allude to Spy and Sports questions, yeah, we don't know who the Acolyte is right now. Most likely it's Osha based on what we've seen. But when you threw that Plagueis in there, yeah, that messes things up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the Plagueis vibe just adds a whole nother dynamics, but, uh, Chimera and Osha are Edward and Bella. It would not surprise me if Chimera sparkles in the next season. Also
Yeah.
calling it Twicolite. Twicolite.
Twilight. Oh, you know what? They should hire you. They should hire you for their
Yeah,
next series.
that's a rebranding right there. And then, of course, the very last scene of the episode, we get a glimpse of the back of none other than Grandmaster, if he is Grandmaster at this moment in time, I actually don't know, Master Yoda, who actually they used the puppet version here, so I was like, "Oh, props to them for doing the
Mm-hmm.
practical rather than the CGI." I thought that was kind of a cool
Yes.
choice, a nice homage to the original trilogy, but,
Yeah,
um
just dust him off from Lucasfilms. Just I mean, he's there. Just
yeah,
put him right there.
pull pulled him out of the
Save some
basement.
save some money.
Yeah. I mean, the major question with including Yoda, obviously, in the same way, that including Plagueis is really cool. Seeing Yoda is really cool. They're characters who we recognize. Yoda way more so than Plagueis, and the risk you run into when you do something like that is this is a character who, if we're talking about like power level, ability in the
Yeah,
Force, strength in the Force, like this is arguably the embodiment of strength in the light, like the strongest strength in the light side of the Force. And so for someone who is actively lying to walk into this room with presumably one of, if not the most wise and powerful Jedi in the galaxy,
very so
like
force sensitive.
very Force sensitive. Like this is the Jedi who in episode 3 during Order 66 is going like, "Oh, oh, ooh," anytime someone across the galaxy dies. And you're telling me he's in the same room with someone who's actively lying, and he not gonna, like, sense that?
Yeah,
I
call that
don't
out.
really.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting choice to include him. I don't know how I feel about it. How did you I mean, obviously, it was cool to see him, but how do you feel about kind of the implications of him being in the end of this show?
I mean, the shock of it obviously was what it was there for us to be like, yeah, let's go, it's Yoda. But yeah, if you step back and think about it, just exactly what you said, she's lying right now, and there's no way that he can't feel that. He probably
Mhm.
felt that when she was doing it, in the Senate. So if he was meditating that time, he probably picked it out. So if he doesn't call this out very, very quickly in season 2, then I don't, then there's a lot of issues with that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's I mean, she walks in the room, he's like, lying you are." Like, he would know.
Yeah, right.
Also, apologies for the bad Yoda impression. Um,
Better than mine.
Spy on Sports also, was throwing out some Acolyte candidates for who the Acolyte actually is. Osha, May, is it both of them together? Ymir, Plagueis, or even Venestra, who is maybe the Acolyte to Plagueis or someone else? All good questions, all things that still seem a little bit uncertain. I mean, if I was casting my bets, I would probably say, like, Osha is the
Yeah,
Acolyte at this point, but,
me too.
um yeah. Talking Turd also said, "I wanna see more Plagueis storyline. I don't think they would drop him if they are not going down that road." That would be the ultimate slap in the face. They show Plagueis,
Yeah,
and then he's not in season 2. Can you imagine the backlash? I mean, it
right.
would be even more than what the show has already had. Be like it's like that commercial with the what's that commercial with the old fisherman where he's got the little bobber, and he's like, "You almost got it. You almost got
Oh
it."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wasn't it like a? It was like an insurance commercial. It wasn't even, yeah, or something like that. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that.
I mean, like, Disney is the fisherman, and they're
Dangling.
cast dangling Plagueis in front of their face. It's like, "Oh, not quite. Come on, come on."
You almost had him.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Acolyte was way better than a lot of people are saying. I think there are a lot of old school fans that can appreciate some of the lore. Yeah, I think that's true. I think for as a lot of the shortcomings, they did make an effort to incorporate a lot of former, formerly
Mm-hmm.
known as EU, now known as Legends stuff, so I thought that in many regards, they did a good job with that, but, um, sounds like a stretch, but Vernestra and Ventress sound very similar. Maybe Vernestra will be banished from the Jedi and go hang out with the Night Sisters? She does kind of resemble
Yeah, now
Ventress,
she
except
does for sure. I think she had
yeah.
hair like earlier on, but
Yeah, in the books, yeah.
yeah, in the books. But being a bald person myself, I appreciate the representation.
Mm. Uh, Vernestra's actions are leading the Jedi towards politicalization. Maybe she's the tool Plagueis is using to drive the Jedi into what will what they became and set them up for Order
Mm,
66. And I feel like that could be a pretty logical direction they go, with Vernestra as a character. Maybe she's like, the first domino, so to speak, in what
yeah.
will eventually be Order 66. But anyways, before we get to our ratings and ranking of the episode, um, we wanted to do something kind of special and look at some of our initial predictions from, I think we did this episode the week before the Acolyte. So, I mean,
Right.
I don't even know what episode it would have been off the top of my head. Probably like episode 80 or so, where we predicted who would and would not survive. So, for the next like 2.5 minutes or so, we're going to take a look at a clip of us predicting which characters would survive and would not survive and react to it with all of you. So, um, I don't even honestly remember what I
I
said.
don't quite remember it either, so this should be fun.
Yeah, yeah. Should we take a look? We're gonna play a
All
quick
right.
game called "Who Will Survive." I'm gonna give you each of the 8 characters we just mentioned, and briefly
Okay.
with a yes or no, you're gonna and you can
Man,
rationalize
this
it
is
if
at
you
my
want.
old place too.
But briefly with a yes or no, will they survive?
Like
Uh,
throughout the season, you're saying, right?
Yeah, like at the end of
Okay.
episode 8, the end of
Okay.
season 1, are they alive or not?
Got you. Okay.
All right. Jedi Master Soul, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. I would probably say
Oh.
yes to for him.
hmm
Jedi
Oh.
Master Indara.
No.
I was also going to say no.
All right, one for
Okay.
two.
Well,
One
these
for
are
two.
poor Carrie Ann Moss.
You
May.
convinced me. That was actually your fault. Because
My
when you said
apologies.
that, I'm like, that's actually a good point.
Yeah, yeah. May. How about May? Is she going to survive the whole season?
She will.
Okay.
Mm.
I'm going to lean yes on this one too, actually.
But
Kel
Osha
Nott.
for 3, will
Not
not,
bad.
though.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's
May will not.
OSHA will not. So the good one won't, but
Osha
the
will.
bad one will.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
we're wrong on that
Come
one
on.
too.
Give
They
me more
swapped.
hints. I feel like just to be different because we've said the same thing so far, I'll say they both survive.
Okay.
Oh, I got
Fine.
it.
Survives.
I was gonna say survives for him too. Jackie Lawn. See, I'm on the fence on this one.
Yeah,
I'm on the fence.
I'm on the
Yeah.
fence with this one too. I'm
Yeah.
going to, just because one of us has to pick and I'll be the bad guy, I will say that she does not survive.
Ooh,
Oh,
okay.
let's go.
I was leaning that way too,
Oh,
actually.
okay. I mean, you can lean that way as well. That's fine.
I'll say that she doesn't survive as
Okay,
well.
okay.
Okay, okay, okay. Yord Fondar, the
I,
goody two
Oof,
shoes
Yord.
overachiever.
I know we said he might make the wrong choice, but actually is the right choice. I'm going to say that he does survive though.
Okay, okay. I
I think I
feel
said he
like both
doesn't, didn't
he
I?
and Jackie won't both not make it.
Mhm.
Oh, never
So
mind.
I'm like
I
kind of
I feel that too.
I'm kind of regretting my Jackie pick just a little bit, but I feel more strongly about him than I do Jackie. So
Don't regret
I'll
it.
say
Don't
he
regret
doesn't
it.
survive.
Okay.
Ooh,
Nice.
Vernestra, though.
Nice. Oh gosh. I She survives.
I was gonna say survives for her. I feel like they can't kill off a character that's so beloved by a specific
Yeah.
subset
True.
of fans, from the High Republic.
Yeah.
All right, lastly, Quamir, perhaps.
The Sith? Yeah, he'll survive. The Sith. We called it.
I'm gonna say he does,
Okay.
only because he's gonna be like the fully realized villain of season 2.
Ah, I like it.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. You call that
That
one
was
really good.
that was before we even knew he was the bad guy.
That's
I think
awesome.
I think we recorded that after episode 1 and 2 of the show, I wanna say, or somewhere around there, but
Oh,
I don't
no, that was before Acolyte even came out.
that was before episode 1? Dang,
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of like I I got a lot of them right. I didn't even
Nice.
remember guessing that many correctly, but, oh, that was from the preview episode, so, yeah, before we even ever watched episode 1. Yeah, nice call on Q. Yeah, I just there's something about him as a character, I don't know, that before the show, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb, say he might be the bad guy," but
Nice.
eh,
Fully
turned out that
realized
way.
bad guy. Even look at that.
Fully realized bad guy. Honestly, we both did way better than I thought we did.
Hmm.
I was getting ready for this, and I was like, "I'm just not gonna watch it before we watch it on the podcast because I wanna be surprised with what I said." And I was expecting to miss, like, 4 or 5, so I'll take that. I don't even know how many I got and missed, but it felt like it was pretty good,
More,
so,
yeah, they're pretty good either way. Nice.
yeah. Alright, here comes the critical, crucial ratings and
Hmm.
gradings of the episodes, and we would open it up to those of you watching the live version of the podcast on YouTube currently. If you had to grade the episode out of 10, what grade would you give it? Now, to preface this, and I feel like I've had to do this with the Acolyte more than most of the other stuff we grade. I feel like we almost grade the Acolyte on a little bit of a curve because it doesn't quite meet
Absolutely.
the same expectations as a lot of other shows, and so like a 8 in the Acolyte is actually like a 6 in another show, or, whatever your scale is. And having also said that, if you've listened to the podcast before and listened to us grade an episode before, you know that neither of us and I mean, it would be almost unfathomable for me to give anything lower than like a 4 personally, just because at the end of the day, it's all Star Wars, and I'm always gonna appreciate the fact that I get more Star Wars, even if I don't you know, even if I don't find the show to be fully cohesive or, um, I think at the end of the day, did I enjoy the experience of watching The Acolyte, even if I didn't agree with a lot of the writing decisions that were made in the show? And I would probably say yes, as crazy as that sounds. Like, I would be the first one to admit there were more things in the show that I disliked, probably, more than liked. Having said that, the parts that I did like, I feel like held it up enough for me to warrant giving it this grade that I'm about to give it, this episode 8 in particular. And yeah, after we grade the episodes, we could maybe even grade the series because my grade would be slightly different for those two things. So, um, the grade I'm gonna give episode 8 is a 7 out of 10. And granted, I think everything I've given has been in the range of 6 to 8 or
Hmm.
8.5, I wanna
Sounds about right.
say. Um, Episode 8, so when we were watching the reaction, my initial thought was as soon as it ended, I said, "I think that might have been my favorite episode." And I think I was weighing a lot of that on the lightsaber scene between Soul and Chimere, which I admittedly loved, probably the brightest spot of the episode for me. I think in many ways, if that scene didn't exist in this episode, my grade would be lower than a 7. Um, Call me like a really basic Star Wars fan for just loving a good one-on-one lightsaber duel, but I
That's why
really
we're here.
enjoyed that. Yeah, I really enjoyed that part of the episode a lot. And not to dive into too many of the negative things because we've already touched on a few of them, but I would just say that kind of May and Osha consistently tend to be some of the reasons that I end up not liking an episode as much as I would love to like it. It feels like the writing for May and Osha and the decision making leaves me kind of questioning every time. I'm like, okay, but weren't you just good in the last episode? Like in the last episode, weren't you trying to kill that guy? Now you're friends with him. You tried to like kill, you tried to like burn the thing down, and now you're mad at your sister or you're happy at your sister. So just the May Osha thing never really fully worked for me, and that's the same way in this episode. I just it didn't feel coherent a lot of the times. And um, having said all of that, I think I would still rate this episode probably if I had to lay them all out 1 through 8. And retrospectively go back and watch them all the way through. I think episode 8 would probably still fall in my 1 through 4 rankings of the episodes rather than my 5 through 8. So in that regard, on the Acolyte scale, I liked it more than not, even though the episode or the show itself might have had things that I disliked more than liked. But I see a lot of people in chat also giving their grades. Do you want to go to chat first, or do you want to give your grade?
No, I wanna make chat mad first, and then we can go over to chat. So I'm a little bit even more basic, a little bit more simpler of a man when it comes to my Star Wars. Um, when at the end of this episode, I was, although we got a lot more questions, there was part of me that actually was interested in the season two. If you would have asked me this after episode three, after episode seven, I would have been like, oh, I don't know, I'm okay if this is a one season type of show. But I will say they dangled that fish right in front of me, that bait right in front of me, and I'm probably gonna be all right taking it because this is the Star Wars that I'm interested in. Plague us alone, you know. Although maybe who knows what this is gonna come out of that. I want to know more about how they're going to bring him in. I want to know more about how Yoda is gonna go into all this. My favorite books from Star Wars is called Lost Stars. And the reason I like it so much is because it really gave good insight on what the Empire side of the story was, as well as the usual rebellion side. And I feel like this show is kind of doing that as well, where
Mm.
you're gonna see a very dark side heavy storyline, and it's called the Acolyte. Let's remember, it is, this is called the Acolyte. This was supposed to be the story about the Sith. Now, will this, what now? Originally, it was supposed to be this murder mystery type of thing, and I've mentioned this before. I never really bought into any of that. It wasn't a huge deal that kind of went out the window pretty quickly. This ended up being a story of the Sith and of the dark side. So something that we don't get to dive into very often. You talk about things like who are we supposed to root for? That's not what this story is about. This story isn't about who we want to root for. This story is about the origins and the continued, dark side users that were in hiding for so long, and now we're going to learn more about them. So that's kind of the angle that I took with this, and makes me more excited for a season two. Now I know I listen, I get that there's a lot of things that, could have gone better, but that's the whole point of this is that, when we talk about like the Jedi kind of being inept and not being able to figure things out. Okay, maybe, from a certain point of view, let's use that. That's kind of what we're looking at it from. And so if you're going to see it from that point of view, you're going to think those types of things. So I'm not so upset about some of those decisions. Does it make full sense to me? No, but I don't think it's supposed to necessarily. So, given all of that, given the episode for this particular episode, I'll give it a 9, and I know that's going to blow everyone's minds out. But like you said earlier, on a curve. This season's, this is this series, and kind of what we expect. And I will admit, kind of painted myself into a corner earlier on, with some of my grades. So I'm trying to base it off of what I've done in the past. Realistically, 8, 7.58 maybe, but based on kind of the grades I've given before on previous episodes, I kind of have to continue on, having that integrity and have it at the 9 there. So that's kind of where I put it. Am excited for a season two if it does come out. We will see if that happens. I don't know. I would understand either way if it happened, if it did or did not happen for season two.
I mean, here's the ironic part too. Like all the people that are really down on this show, I mean, I think they even want a season 2 because like we said, the finale posed, more questions than answers, arguably. So it's like, well, even if I'm down on the show, I still want answers to these questions. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm not like down on it as much as like some people are. Like, I feel like if you can look at a show and give it a 0 out of 10, like, okay, well, we have to be able to recognize like some of the things
So,
that it did well.
right,
It's
right,
like,
yeah.
so, I mean, I think for what it's worth, like you said, part of looking at a grade on an episode is like how did it make you feel? How much did you enjoy it? And as much as like some of the plot things for me didn't quite feel coherent and cohesive, At the end of the day, I got a lightsaber fight that I really enjoyed out of this episode, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that was probably it was definitely my favorite part of this episode. I would even argue maybe my favorite part of the series. Um, so
Oh yeah,
a
sure.
all that to say, I mean, let's hear from a couple people in chat. I saw a couple people giving their scores earlier too. Um, the last episode, Talking Turd says 6.5, maybe 7. Found Sports said an 8.5 for the action, but a 6.5 for the story. I mean, I would feel that way too. I feel like that's pretty accurate of how I feel as well. A series, a 6.1. Okay, okay. Going to the tenths of a decimals. I like it. Um, Talking Turd also said the budding romance is not really something I could see being used to bring the female audience. Chimera is pretty much a clone of Daryl Dixon, and look what he did for the show, uh, female viewer wise. Why? Who does Daryl Dixon play? Why do I not know that name? I guess I
He's
could look
from
it up here.
Walking Dead. Is
Oh
Daryl?
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
that's
yeah,
Daryl, right? Is that Daryl Dixon from that Walking Dead?
yeah. Daryl Dixon. Okay, yeah, yeah. I know who we're talking about now. Talking Turd also said series overall, I'd give a generous 7 because there was more that interested me than bugged me. That's fair. That's fair. I
I
like
like
it.
that.
Kid Caduceus also with a 7. Plagueis and Yoda are the carrot on the stick to lure fans to the show. Personally, I think it will likely pay off. The second season, I think, will have a different title than the Acolyte. I think it'll be the first
Mm.
of 3 seasons that will make a trilogy of prequels. The prequels, Acolyte was pretty much Phantom. So it's the prequel to the prequel. So
Interesting.
does that make, if there is a number 2 and number 3, is the season we just watched the prequel of the prequels to the prequels?
Oh my god, my head just exploded.
That was yeah, I was trying too hard on that one. Oh, people are asking if maybe Shmi will be tied to these events some way through the Night Sisters. Ooh, I mean, that is not even a thought that
Yeah.
crossed my mind, but it would be really interesting, yeah. Uh, you get a 1 just for hitting record. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you turn to the camera on, you get a 1. There you go. Are all the reviewers and critiquers going to make videos about? Yeah, I know, right? I feel like every time I'm on YouTube on the Star Wars side of things, it's like so many people critiquing this show, and I mean that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. Like, as much as it appears like the Acolyte was a really unsuccessful venture on the surface, like you still have a bunch of people watching it almost just to hate on it. And so like
Mm-hmm.
it still makes money in that sense, I guess.
Right.
I mean, so again, I don't know how that all factors into the decision making process of greenlighting a second season or not, but um that's quite the wild theory. I like that next one. Wild Sports said, bold prediction. Ymir and Osha turn out to be Ahsoka's great grandparent.
there,
That'd be kind of
there it
wild.
is, guys. There it
Yeah.
is.
Do you wanna grade the show as a whole before we get out of here?
I think for the show, I mean, I would give it. Who was it that gave it a? Oh, there was a 6.1. I think that's what Spine Support said. I would give it a 7. I would give it probably
Mhm.
a 7 overall. The lows were pretty low. Some of the highs were pretty nice and high, but the average of it all kind of wasn't like, you know, wasn't really super compelling. There were a lot of issues along the way that are just very hard to reconcile at times.
Mm.
Even with, even if you're looking at it, kind of what I mentioned earlier, from the dark side of it all, I think it's just it's just not what we're used to. So it still makes it a little bit difficult for me to say like 8, 9, 10. So I would give it a 7.
Nice. Yeah, I actually really resonate with Spy on Sports grade of a 6.1. I feel like
Hmm.
that is pretty accurate for me. Um, I think the action, like Spy on Sports also said in the previous comment, was probably what brings it up a little bit for me. As much as people seem to not really like the action in episode 5, I actually really liked the action in that episode.
Yep.
And of course the episode we just saw, episodes 5 and 8 were episode 5 was my favorite episode. 8 was probably my second favorite episode. Um So the action holds the series up a little bit. The plot brings the series down a little bit.
Yep.
So maybe I would say like from an action perspective, I mean honestly, because it was probably the best lightsaber fights anything that Disney has made, I would probably give it like at least an 8 for action. Maybe even like an 8.5.
Yeah, sure.
Um, for plot, man, I don't know. I'm going like 5 to 5.5. Maybe that's too critical, but it just I felt myself like questioning character decision making a lot. And so I guess I'll even that out around the 6.1 mark that Spy on Sports took. I kind of like that
Fair.
grade. I feel like that's pretty accurate of how I felt about the show. But there were highs, there were lows. Really enjoyed the highs, was questioning my decision making and during the lows, but overall, yeah, even Soul could see that rating coming. Nice.
Nice, Gibbo.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like a lot of the people that sort of hate review on the Acolyte, it they feels like they watch it with the intention of hating it.
Right.
That is what kind of bothers me, and I know it bothers you too. Is like why if you're watching Star Wars, like watch it to hope that it's good at least. Don't just watch something so that you can like make a clickbait video and be like, this sucks and this is awful and it's all
Yeah.
trash and this is why it sucks. And it's like, why
By the
even
way,
like
by the way, don't look at all of our thumbnails though.
yeah, yeah. Like why even be like a fan of Star Wars at that point if you're just gonna like not even try to like it or like not even try
Mhm.
to like it, just be like optimistic about that it could be. I guess people lose hope and lose faith over the course of a season, and I get that too, but it just felt like a lot of the sentiment from the get-go with this show was very negative. And episode 3 probably was responsible for a lot of that. I feel like it never really turned itself around after episode 3, but, um, anyways, all that being said, we want to pose the question to all of you. Will there be a season 2 of The Acolyte? Check out the Hoth Hangout community tab and over on X here in the coming day or two, where you can cast your vote on this question, or let us know if you're watching the live version of the podcast here in chat. Do you guys think there will be a season 2 of The Acolyte? I mean, certainly the story is set up for there to be, but is that something that's going to happen? That's the question that's on all of our minds as the first season of this show has come to a conclusion. Like we said, quite the wild ride. Some fun highs, some really low lows, but nonetheless, we got a show that I think left a lot of people wanting a little bit more from. Having said all of that, I'm still glad we got a show rather than nothing. So better to have something, I guess, than to not have it, and then you know, hopefully the showrunners and the creators will maybe take some of the feedback and implement it in the writing for the second season of the show if it does happen. So, um, what's the next show and when? The next Hoth Hangout show or the next Star Wars show? If you're talking about the next Star Wars show, I believe Joe Skeleton Crew. Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. I want to say this does have a release date, and I believe it's fall of this year,
Yeah, I thought
maybe
it was like around
winter.
Thanksgiving. I thought it was like more like Thanksgiving time.
Yeah, Thanksgiving time sounds right. Let's just look it up here live on the spot, I guess. Um, Skeleton Crew being one that I don't think is going to get as much uh, eyes on it as the Acolyte probably did. But the first episode date right now is simply listed as 2024 for this
Mhm.
show. I don't think they've narrowed down a specific release, but I thought it was going to be quarter 4 of 2024. So Um, I mean, that means in the next 5 months, we'll be getting a new Star Wars show, hopefully, so, um actually, yeah, Joey and I was you and I were talking and, uh, this is the last time in a while that we're gonna have a week where we do, like, more than one thing during the
Right.
week. Yeah, and actually, this week, we actually did 3 with
Oh, that's right. We did do the card opening. Yeah.
the box break on Monday, yeah,
Oh
but
wait, can I show you something?
yes, absolutely.
So I may have opened the other box because I it was killing me. You want to know what I pulled?
Did you pull another Crate Dragon?
No, but what kind of card would you want to pull if you were going to pull from
A
that set?
hyperspace foil that's also a rare or legendary?
No, better.
Better. Like an alternate hero card?
The showcase cards.
The showcase hero?
Yeah. 1 out of
Oh,
12 boxes.
you have it with
So
you right now that you
I
can
have it with
show.
me. Yeah, I have it with me right now. Check it out. Gar Saxon.
Oh, that is sick.
Yeah, it's a Gar Saxon pull.
No
I was
way.
super happy, and here's the backside of it. So, for those who don't know, this is like the Star Wars Unlimited box breaks that it won't focus for whatever reason. Anyway, the Star Wars Unlimited box break that we did earlier this week. I broke another box just on my own and pulled this super rare card, one of 12 boxes. You can grab one of these, and I pulled it, so I was very happy about that.
That's cool. Congratulations on the cool pull.
Yeah, I'm sad we didn't pull this one on the live on the box break, but it's fine. It's fine.
Mm, and if anyone missed our box break, it's up on YouTube if you're interested in checking out some of the Star Wars box breaks we've got available over on YouTube. By the way, Spy on Sports also said, I think the story will continue in other media and references in future shows and films. I don't think Disney will greenlight season 2. That could honestly be an approach that they do take.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that very well happening. As Kid Caduceus said, I feel like Skeleton Crew will have an Ewoks battle for indoor treatment. Oh no. On next week's episode of the Hoth Hangout Podcast, episode 90, we are doing what we are deeming our second episode of Jedi Knights of the Round Table. If you haven't seen our first episode or unfamiliar with what that is, it's essentially where we invite other Star Wars creators, members of the Star Wars community, and we invite them on for a podcast, and we talk a topic for the week. Likely that topic is going to be largely centered around the Acolyte in next week's episode when we invite those other members on. So stay tuned for information regarding who our special guests are going to be for the podcast next week. And so, again, that's what we can expect for episode 90, Jedi Knights of the Round Table, episode 2, coming next week to a podcast near you. Lastly, want to say a quick thank you to all those of you who are subscribed over on YouTube. Thank you to the 442 of you now. I believe we went up a sub during the live stream. Shout out to the one new subscriber and all 442 of you who are currently subscribed. As we get closer and closer to that 500 mark, we appreciate you very much. And if you're happening to be watching the live stream at this moment and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe. It helps us get closer to that 500 mark. The Hoth Hangout community or the Hoth Hangout crew can be reached at hothhangout@gmail.com. Shoot us your Star Wars thoughts, questions, or otherwise, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. Additionally, you can find the Hoth Hangout podcast wherever you get your pods, including both Apple and Spotify. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a 5-star review, leave a 5-star review on the pod. We would appreciate it very much. And it does also allow other people who love Star Wars to more easily discover the podcast as well. We're also findable on the socials, whether it be at Instagram, TikTok, or X. We are at Hoth Hangout on each of those. Definitely check us out on the socials and hit the follow button on each of those as well. The Hoth Hangout community Discord server is findable down in the show notes of today's episode as well. Join the Hoth Hangout community Discord server and see all that it has to offer if you are a Star Wars fan. Man, we had quite the first live stream episode today. I believe we officially have hit the 2-hour mark, which is
Yeah.
brings me back to the good old days of podcasting about
Yeah.
Andor with no script, where we would just talk for 2 hours. Yeah, 159 right now. We're about there. So, Joey, any last thoughts, comments, words on the Acolyte episode 8, or just the show as a whole before we sign off for today?
Well, another show is in the books here with the Acolyte. It was very fun covering it over the past, couple months here. A lot of fun today. I hope you guys had fun watching the live show, being more interactive with us as well. Maybe we'll do a couple more of these in the future. But yeah, we do appreciate everybody that was able to come in. And if you were in chat, if you were chatting, if you were lurking, if you are subbing, if you are sharing the stream, we do appreciate everybody who who was out there supporting us over not only this episode but over almost the last 2 years. We're getting closer to 100 episodes, so we're almost there. But so thank you everybody. We do appreciate you guys, and hope we have more Star Wars discussions like this in the future.
Absolutely. Looking forward to more like this in the future as well. Yeah, you mentioned episode 100 as well. That's on the horizon. Keep an eye out, everyone, for our plans for episode 100. We're hoping to do something really special for that too. So, and yeah, maybe another live podcast coming in the near future as well. This was really fun. We enjoyed this a lot. Like Joey said, much love to all those of you who participated in today's stream in the variety of ways as possible. So, having said that, shout out to George Lucas. Shout out to Dave Filoni. Shout out to, let's see, Darth Plagueis, to Jedi Master Soul, and to all the
Seventh.
good Jedi we lost in the last 8 episodes of the Acolyte, as my camera appears to be done for the day. So, having said all of that, I'd also want to wish a big thank you to Gibbo. If we could get some love for Gibbo in the chat for producing today's show, video, and assets, and for being that motor behind Hoth Hangout and the guy who is lurking in the cave behind the scenes, just like Darth Plagueis. Much love, Gibbo. We appreciate you very much, and we'll hope to catch you all next week in episode 90 of the Hoth Hangout podcast, when we'll be bringing on some fun guests, talking some more Acolyte. And until then, it's been a pleasure, everyone. Thank you so much again for listening. And as always, may the Force be with you.